I am Grace. I am sitting in my Savannah penthouse looking at the framed first place certificate from the regional science fair I've had for 18 years. The memory of my mother's birthday dinner still feels raw, like an open wound that is slowly starting to heal. It started 3 weeks ago when Gregory, a board member at my firm, invited me to discuss the final approval of the Miller acquisition, a deal worth $28,400,000. I am going home today. They think I am invisible. They are wrong. Please leave a comment letting me know where you are listening to this story from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. I am standing in front of my closet counting the seconds. It has been 8 minutes. I choose a plain gray blouse. Gray is unremarkable. It is the kind of color that tells people I am just a low-level data entry clerk, a paper pusher who barely makes enough to cover rent, not a threat to anyone. Dressing for invisibility has been my strategy for a long time, a necessary shield to avoid the kind of scrutiny that my sister, Victoria, thrives on. Most people will look at my life and call me weak for hiding my light, but they do not understand the invisible chains of a survivor. In the Marsh family, success is not celebrated. It is harvested or destroyed if it ever threatens Victoria's position as the golden child. My silence is not a lack of pride. It is a prison without bars, one I built to keep my real life safe from their reach. I learned early that in this house, you only grow if you stay in the shadows. I look at that watercolor of the mountains, and I see the 11-year-old version of myself. It was a regional science fair in November. I had spent 3 weeks building a model of a sustainable water system, a project my teacher had been watching closely. My parents told me they would try to make it for the results, but the fair clashed with Victoria's piano recital. They said she needed them more because she got nervous. I stood by my project at 1:15 in the afternoon, watching other families arrive with flowers and balloons. Not a single member of my family showed up. At 2:40, they announced the winners. I won first place. The judge handed me a thick red ribbon with gold lettering. There was no one there to share my happiness with. When my parents finally came home at 4:30, they were already planning where to take Victoria to celebrate her recital. My mother asked about the fair on her way out the door, and I simply said it went fine. I folded that red ribbon into a tiny square and pushed it into the dark corner of my pocket. 3 weeks later, when I finally mentioned that I had won, my mother just said, "Oh, really?" in a distracted tone that made me feel like an interruption. That was the day I stopped sharing my life with them, while I coordinated moves across this multi-million-dollar chessboard. I zip up my garment bag and make a final cup of coffee. It is a 2-hour and 20-minute drive to the Marsh estate. I check my calendar. The 7 o'clock board call is still on. I tell myself this is just an experiment, a chance to let the truth finally be seen. But deep down, I know it is the final accounting. I pull into the driveway of the Marsh estate at 5:30 in the evening. The house looks exactly like it has for decades. The yellow kitchen, the creaky floors, and that suffocating smell of old wood and older expectations. My mother, Patricia, meets me at the door with a hug that feels like a rehearsed performance. She mentions Victoria wasn't sure I could make it because of work, but I simply tell her I moved some things around. The house is a museum of my invisibility. There is a large framed photo of Victoria and Tyler in Hawaii on the wall, while my college graduation photo is tucked into a corner, almost hidden behind a decorative lamp. I take my place at the far end of the dining table and place my phone face down beside my plate. The first 20 minutes are pleasant enough: wine, bread, and a small birthday cake for my mother. But the air in the room is thin. Victoria is already holding court, her voice cutting through the clinking of silverware like a sharpened blade. Then she turns her attention to me. "So, Grace, still at that company in the city? What do you do again? Clean up the ruins for the rich? You're like a professional middleman, right?" The table erupts in laughter. My mother, Tyler, and even the family friends join in as if it is the funniest joke they have ever heard. This is the trap of normalized cruelty. In this house, my humiliation is the social glue that binds them together. They do not see me as a person. They see me as a scapegoat whose dignity is the currency they use to buy each other's favor. It is a collective game they play to avoid looking at their own failures. Victoria keeps pressing, asking if my little job even pays well. She starts bragging about her own brand building efforts, while Tyler mentions his recent commercial project, a contract he claims is worth $1,600,000. I do the mental math. I know Victoria's business is hemorrhaging cash, and Tyler is drowning in debt, but I just say, interesting. At 6:58, my phone screen pulses with a silent notification. Victoria notices it with that casual confidence she has always had, as if she owns my very privacy. Let us all hear who the janitor has been talking to, she sneers, reaching across the table and snatching it before I can move. She hits the speaker button, her face a mask of malicious glee, waiting for a bill collector or a low-level boss to berate me. Before the phone could even ring, Tyler suddenly cleared his throat and slid a document across the table. Actually, Grace, since you're here, I need you to sign this formal release for the Old Family Trust, he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. It's just a technicality for the bank. Since you're not using the funds anyway, signing this will allow me to restructure my business debt. It's the least you can do for the family. I looked at the paper. It was not a technicality, it was a confession. At exactly 7 o'clock, the phone rings. It is Gregory, the senior board member. Good evening, Miss Grace. His voice booms through the silent dining room, carrying a weight of authority that makes even my father straighten his back. The board vote came through a few minutes ago, unanimous. The Miller acquisition is approved at $28,400,000. Congratulations. We could not have closed this without you. I did not reach for the phone immediately. I let the silence stretch, long and suffocating, until it filled every corner of that yellow kitchen. I watched the color drain from Tyler's face. I watched Victoria's hand start to tremble as she realized she was holding the physical evidence of her own irrelevance. The table that had been shaking with laughter just seconds ago was now as still as a tomb. They were not shocked by what they had done to me. They were terrified because the person they had been kicking suddenly owned the boots. I stood up slowly and walked around the table. I took my phone back from Victoria's limp fingers. She did not even try to hold on to it. You have spent years trying to make me feel small, Victoria, I said, my voice clinical, devoid of the hurt they expected. You called me a middleman. You called me a janitor. But while you were performing for Savannah Society, I was performing due diligence. I turned my gaze to Tyler. He would not meet my eyes. Tyler, you mentioned that big contract earlier, I said. You forgot to mention that it was funded by a high-interest line of credit from the Miller Corporation. I leaned in slightly, my shadow falling over his shoulder. The Miller Corporation, the company I just acquired, is the sole creditor for your business's expansion loan. I have spent the last 48 hours reviewing the Miller portfolio. Your account is 60 days past due, Tyler. And according to the terms of the contract, the lender has the right to call the full balance of that $1,600,000 immediately. I realized in that moment that I had been the silent investor in their version of family for 18 years. I had paid for their comfort with my silence, footing the bill for a subscription to a family that never actually wanted me. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for decades, but this was not revenge. It was accounting. You are not just my brother-in-law anymore, Tyler, I said, the words falling like iron weights. You are a liability on my new balance sheet. And since you are so fond of discussing work at dinner, I thought you should know. Your warehouse and your equipment are the collateral I now control. I looked at my mother, who was clutching her wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. The dinner party was over. The audit had just begun. Grace, stop this right now, my mother said, her voice trembling with an entitlement that $28 million could not cure. If you have this kind of power, you should be using it to protect your sister, to save Tyler. You're being incredibly selfish. Selfish? I repeated the word in my head. It was a fascinating choice of vocabulary for a woman who had not noticed me winning first place at age 11 because her other daughter needed to be the center of the universe. To Patricia, family was not a connection. It was a non-recourse loan she expected me to provide in perpetuity. My success was not my own to her. It was an asset she felt entitled to liquidate for Victoria's benefit. Victoria stood up, her designer chair screeching against the hardwood floor. You think you are better than us now? She shrieked, her face contorted in a way that no amount of expensive skincare could hide. You probably stole secret documents from Tyler's office. You have been planning this takeover for years using our name. You are nothing but a corporate vulture picking at your own family's bones. She did not stop at the dining table. Before I could even stand, she was typing furiously on her phone. Within seconds, my own notifications started pulsing. She had posted a public rant to her thousands of followers. She framed me as a manipulative thief who had stolen business secrets to facilitate a hostile takeover. She was attempting to use her social currency to devalue my professional reality. She called it a betrayal of the Marsh legacy. I did not argue. I did not defend my professional integrity to a room that had already decided I was a janitor. Anger was not loud this time, it was clinical. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon regret, but there was only clarity. This was not a breakdown, it was a balance sheet. I simply stood up and smoothed out my plain gray blouse. Enjoy the cake, Mother, I said quietly. I am going back to the city to finish my work. My sister and mother were not shocked by what they had done to me over the years. They were only shocked that I had stopped playing along. As I walked to my car, the Savannah night air felt cleaner than the air inside that house. I parked on a quiet side street and called my lead forensic auditor. I need a full, deep tissue audit of the Marsh family trust and every subsidiary linked to Tyler's holdings, I told him. I suspect the $1,600,000 shortfall in the Miller portfolio isn't just bad management, it is personal. Inside my car, my phone glowed with a different kind of sunrise, the kind made of facts, numbers, and quiet retribution. The audit did not take long. When you have spent your career dismantling corporate giants, a small town family trust is transparent. I sat in my study, the blue light of my laptop screen illuminating the room, as the lead auditor walked me through the digital trail. I did not feel the panic I would have felt years ago. There was a deficit, a massive, gaping hole where my security was supposed to be. $1,600,000 was gone. The exact amount Tyler had boasted about earlier. It was as if they had not even tried to be clever. They just assumed I would never look. I had been paying for my own life since I was 18. I took out loans for college, worked 3 jobs, and lived on scraps, while I watched Victoria buy designer bags and take trips to Tuscany. I always assumed they were just being generous with their own money. I never once suspected they were being generous with mine. I had spent years treating that account as dead money, a toxic tether to a life I wanted to forget. I willfully ignored it, trusting our longtime family attorney to handle the administrative side. I never imagined he was in Tyler's pocket, redirecting my annual statements to the Marsh estate instead of my office in the city. I asked the auditor why I had not seen the statements. The answer was a protective clause Patricia had activated 3 years ago. She had submitted a forged power of attorney along with a fraudulent medical affidavit of incapacity, claiming I was mentally and financially unstable to trigger a restrictive clause that locked my access until my 30th birthday. I was 29. She had bought herself a decade of theft by branding me as incompetent. But the real kill shot came an hour later. The auditor sent over a scan of the withdrawal authorization forms. My signature was there, clear and bold, right at the bottom of the page. Except I had been in London, closing a deal, on the day that form was signed. The digital signature had been traced back to a computer at the Marsh estate, specifically Tyler's office. Patricia had provided the authority, and Tyler had provided the hand. They had not just ignored me, they had committed a felony to ensure the golden child never had to experience a moment of financial discomfort. I looked at the forged signature. It was a beautiful imitation, almost identical to the way I used to sign my name when I still wanted them to notice me. Now, it was just evidence. I did not call my mother to yell. I did not text Victoria to demand an explanation. This was not a family drama anymore. This was a criminal investigation. I authorized my legal team to file a formal report for embezzlement and forgery. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years, and now the account was closed. The doorbell in my penthouse did not sound like a chime, it sounded like a surrender. I opened it to find Patricia and Victoria. The manicured masks they had worn at dinner were gone. Patricia's eyes were bloodshot, and Victoria's designer blouse was wrinkled, reflecting the internal collapse of their world. They were not here to apologize. They were here to negotiate with a janitor they could no longer control. Grace, please, my mother started, her voice cracking. You have to call off the legal team. Tyler was just taken in for questioning. They are talking about 5 to 10 years for forgery and embezzlement of $1,600,000. You are destroying your sister's life over a family misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I said, my voice as cold as the marble floors beneath us. A misunderstanding is forgetting a birthday. A felony is forging my signature to liquidate my future while calling me a burden to my face. This is not a breakdown, Mother. It is an audit. And the Marsh family is officially bankrupt in character. Victoria lunged forward, her hands shaking. You think you are so high and mighty with your $28 million deal? We are family, Grace. You are supposed to protect us. She was still using the language of debt, still trying to make me feel like I was the one who had defaulted on an emotional contract. I looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time in 18 years. She was a golden child who had been hollowed out by her own entitlement. We will pay it back, Patricia pleaded. We will sell Tyler's equipment. We will make it right. You cannot pay it back, I replied, pulling a thick envelope from the hallway table. While the forensic team was looking at the trust, my holding company was looking at the Marsh estate. You and Tyler took out a second mortgage on the family home to cover his business losses. It was a toxic asset. No bank would touch it, so I did. I handed the envelope to my mother. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It was a notice to vacate. I purchased the debt of the Marsh estate through an anonymous subsidiary. My legal team has already processed the eviction through the local sheriff's office. You are 90 days past due. As the new owner of the property, I am terminating your right of occupancy, effective immediately. Victoria let out a strangled sob, but I felt only the quiet click of a completed ledger. You called me a janitor, Victoria. You told the table I was only good for cleaning up ruins for the rich. Well, you were right. Today, I am finally cleaning the trash out of the Marsh Empire. You have 48 hours to pack. Anything left behind will be liquidated. I closed the door, the sound of the deadbolt sliding into place, serving as the final period on a 22-year-long sentence. Victoria did not just lose the Marsh estate, she lost the only thing she ever actually valued, her reputation. In the months that followed, Savannah's high society performed its own kind of professional acquisition, merging their collective disgust and acquiring a new target to ostracize. Victoria was no longer the muse of the garden parties. She was the cautionary tale whispered about over brunch at the country club. Tyler's business did not just fail, it became a crime scene. He is currently facing trial for the $1,600,000 forgery and embezzlement, his expensive tailored suits replaced by a legal reality he cannot talk his way out of. I did not keep the money I clawed back from their betrayal. Instead, I established the Eleanor Foundation. We provide specialized legal support, counseling, and educational funding for children and young adults who have been marginalized or exploited within their own homes. This is my justice of construction. While my family was obsessed with the justice of punishment, fighting over who got what piece of a hollow empire I chose to build, by creating a future for others, I made the cruelty of my past small and irrelevant. I went back to the estate one last time before the new owners moved in. My mother was sitting on the back porch in one of those old rocking chairs, looking at the overgrown garden. There was no wine this time, just 2 glasses of sweet tea and a heavy, honest silence. I know, she said, her voice sounding small and tired for the first time in my life. I did not try to see you, and you did not try to show me. It was easier to look at Victoria. I told her about the science fair 18 years ago, about winning first place and having no one to share it with. She closed her eyes for a long moment, and I realized that the 11-year-old girl who once stood alone next to her sustainable irrigation model finally got to share the pride of that red ribbon. I have come to realize that cutting off toxic family members is not a betrayal, it is a revolution. For 18 years, I thought my worth was a balance sheet they had to approve. I thought if I stayed invisible enough or worked hard enough, they would eventually notice the person I was. But the truth is, you cannot find your value in a house that is designed to keep you lost. Blood makes you related, but character and integrity make you family. If you find yourself in a similar situation, remember that your silence is not weakness. It is a preparation for a storm of justice. You do not need their permission to be luminous. Forgiveness is not always about the other person. Sometimes it is the only way to set yourself free from the debt of their expectations. I chose to stop being their janitor and started being the architect of my own life. And for the first time, the view from the top is perfectly clear. If you have ever been the invisible one in your own family, please leave a red ribbon emoji in the comments. Let the world know that your silence was just the preparation for your own storm of justice. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another story of reclamation.